single patch on your back, the symbol of membership in a motorcycle club, could end up costing everything you've built. It isn't just about arrests. In recent years, federal prosecutors in the United States have shown they can seize more than people's freedom. They can take away their identity. When agents of the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, told a member of Mongols Motorcycle Club he had earned his patch, the man answered bluntly, "Being a Mongol promises you one of two things, death or prison." What he failed to realize was there was a third possibility. The government could erase the name off his back entirely. In 2018, U.S. prosecutors attempted to do exactly that, to confiscate not only property, but the club's trademark, logo, and national identity. That legal move struck fear into the hearts of every outlaw motorcycle gang in the country. For decades, these clubs operated under a simple but powerful code. What happens inside the clubhouse stays there. Loyalty was sacred. Brotherhood was their armor. But federal prosecutors found a way to turn that code against them. They turned their patches into weapons, their loyalty into evidence, and their brotherhood into criminal conduct. At the center of the strategy is a law passed in 1970, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, RICO. Originally designed to dismantle organized crime, the Italian mafia among them, it enables prosecutors to charge entire organizations, not just individuals. Under RICO, the government does not need proof that you personally committed a violent act. It only needs to show that you participated in a pattern of criminal activity that benefited the enterprise. That participation can be as minor as running errands, attending club meetings, or even simply wearing your patch in certain settings. The statute identifies dozens of crimes that can count as predicate offenses, from drug trafficking and weapons offenses to murder, fraud, and gambling. In early 2025, for example, prosecutors in Texas indicted 14 members of the Bandidos motorcycle club on RICO charges. The indictment alleged the national leadership had issued a smash-on-sight order during a violent 2019 turf war with a rival gang. That order led to gunfire on public roads and in establishments packed with civilians, a direct confrontation not just with law enforcement, but with society at large. Because of RICO, mob bosses who have never personally pulled a trigger can face the same charges as the hitmen they command. Under this law, entire crime families began to crumble. Devoted club members who believed they were simply following orders suddenly found themselves facing decades in prison. But perhaps the most devastating legal weapon government prosecutors discovered was civil forfeiture. Not just seizing drugs, guns, or cash, but claiming the very symbols these clubs rally around: patches, logos, trademarks, and even club names. Consider what happened in the case of the Mongols. In 2008, during an undercover operation known as Operation Black Rain, 4 male ATF agents spent years infiltrating the club, living under fake identities, running drugs, performing errands, and proving their trustworthiness. 4 female agents posed as their girlfriends so the operation could pass muster. Over 3 years, the agents became full-patch members, accepted into the Brotherhood. Within weeks of issuing federal warrants, 110 arrest orders were served across 6 states. 77 members eventually pleaded guilty to RICO violations. That operation laid the foundation for the 2018 case. Prosecutors indicted the Mongols nationwide, meaning every full-patch member, regardless of individual conduct. They sought to strip the club of its name, its center logo, its trademark, the rallying marks these men wore like armor. Prosecutors argued that the patches empowered members to commit crimes. If the court had agreed, any member could have literally had his patch torn off his back by law enforcement. The implications were staggering. It was an existential threat to every motorcycle club in America because patches were not merely insignia. They represented decades of brotherhood, sacrifice, loyalty, and identity. In 2019, however, the attempt failed, at least temporarily. David Carter, a U.S. district judge, rejected the seizure effort, ruling it would violate First Amendment protections of free expression and the Eighth Amendment's ban on excessive punishment. He described a club patch as a collective membership mark, a trademark that identified a person's membership in a group, akin to a sports jersey or fraternity pin. He warned that allowing wholesale seizure would chill speech nationwide. He also noted that the government had targeted a primarily Latino club, while failing to act against rival biker clubs, unions, churches, sports leagues, or fraternities. In effect, he questioned whether enforcement was selective and discriminatory. In 2024, the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit upheld Carter's ruling, blocking the trademark seizure, while leaving the underlying RICO convictions intact. While the Mongols avoided losing their patch, the case set a dangerous precedent. The government demonstrated its willingness to hold an entire organization liable, even if individual members hadn't committed the most serious crimes. Civil forfeiture in biker club cases, however, extends beyond just patches. Prosecutors routinely target clubhouses, motorcycles, cash, weapons, and personal property. In 2015, for example, U.S. Marshals demolished 3 buildings in Indianapolis used by Outlaw's Motorcycle Club as headquarters and living quarters. Judges ruled that the properties served as sources of power and coordination for criminal enterprises, and thus could be seized. Similar seizures happened in Fort Wayne and other cities. Across the border in Canada, a similar tactic has succeeded. In 2023, a British Columbia appellate court ordered the seizure of 3 clubhouses belonging to Hells Angels Motorcycle Club in Vancouver, Nanaimo, and another city. The properties were found to be safe houses and coordination hubs integral to running criminal operations away from police detection. The decision, final after the Canadian Supreme Court declined to hear the case, showed that non-conviction-based forfeiture can be used to dismantle the infrastructure of outlaw motorcycle gangs. Law enforcement's most effective weapon has remained undercover infiltration. The case of former ATF agent William Queen is instructive. From 1998 to 2000, he lived as Billy St. John, a full-patch member of the Mongols San Fernando Valley chapter. To prove his loyalty, he trafficked drugs, weapons, stole motorcycles, drove getaway cars, and even carried out violent tasks, like sewing up a beaten woman's face after a club member assaulted her girlfriend. He witnessed planning sessions for murders and sexual assaults. Despite the brutal reality, Queen came to understand the club's internal camaraderie, the loyalty, the brotherhood, the closeness. When separated from his family, friends, and ATF colleagues, the club became his only source of belonging. That psychological attachment, often underestimated by outsiders, makes infiltration deeply dangerous. Agents must live false lives for years. They must perform crimes to maintain cover, but also draw a personal moral line somewhere. Even then, the strain breaks many undercover officers. A similar operation, Operation Black Biscuit, 2001 to 2003, saw ATF agents infiltrate the Hells Angels by creating a pseudo-chapter of a Mexican biker gang made entirely of undercover operatives. These agents effectively circumvented the long initiation process, typical of outlaw clubs, avoiding illicit acts like murder or rape while gaining enough credibility to gather vital evidence. In recognition of its difficulty and risk, lead agent Jay Dobbins received high honors, including the U.S. Attorney General's Medal of Valor. Yet even so, he has spoken openly about how the experience changed him, how he lost faith in people, a common outcome for operatives with years undercover. Undercover infiltration and RICO are powerful, but they are not foolproof. In 2015, a violent clash between rival biker gangs erupted at a restaurant in Waco, Texas. Around 200 members of rival clubs, including the Bandidos and the Cossacks, met at the same event. A dispute turned into a chaotic melee, guns were fired and 9 people died. Law enforcement detained 177 people. Prosecutors brought identical charges against them all, accusing them of organized criminal activity, including murder and aggravated assault. But after years of litigation, the strategy collapsed. Only one case went to trial, and it ended in a mistrial. Prosecutors failed to prove who fired fatal shots or who threw the first punch. As of 2019, all remaining charges were dropped. Defense attorneys and civil rights experts harshly criticized the effort as a failure. The massive violent event produced 0 criminal convictions. Instead, more than 130 bikers filed lawsuits, alleging false arrest and violations of constitutional rights. The Waco fiasco proved that even dramatic violence, video footage, and hundreds of weapons may not be enough when evidence cannot tie criminal acts to specific individuals. In short, the most aggressive, even dramatic law enforcement operations may still run into legal and evidentiary obstacles when hundreds of people act at once and it is impossible to determine who did what. Even so, prosecutors and law enforcement continue applying pressure. In October 2025, for example, a raid on a Bandidos clubhouse in Texas led to the seizure of 33 firearms, body armor, gang paraphernalia, cash believed to be the proceeds of narcotics sales, a stolen motorcycle, and a pistol. The club remains under investigation, and criminal cases are expected. Between RICO indictments, civil forfeitures, and repeated raids, authorities have developed a multi-layered strategy against outlaw clubs. RICO prosecutions target the organization as a whole, holding everyone liable for a pattern of crimes. Civil forfeiture strips away safe houses, property, and the symbols that represent gang identity and power. Undercover infiltration provides the intelligence and evidence necessary to prove criminal enterprise. For many outlaw clubs, this has become an existential threat. What once was the most defining element of a club, the brotherhood, the patches, the rules, is now its greatest weakness. The same features that distinguish these clubs, open membership, formal structure, trademarked logos, and documented hierarchies, now give prosecutors their roadmap. Patrol motorcycles, potential evidence clubhouse, a base of operations, meetings and bylaws, evidence of a structured criminal enterprise. Even wearing your patch in public could draw police attention, trigger seizure, or result in prosecution. Members face a terrible choice: either abandon the brotherhood they once cherished, giving up lifelong ties, friendships, and identity, or remain loyal and risk heavy prison sentences, loss of property, and dismantling of their social network. To prosecutors, the culture itself is criminal. Brotherhood is conspiracy. Loyalty is a crime. The very symbols these clubs use to show pride, loyalty, and identity are now treated as contraband. In the decades since RICO's enforcement began, some organized crime and motorcycle club families have collapsed. Others survive, but only under heavy surveillance, frequent raids, and the constant threat of legal action. Even when courts stop short of seizing symbols, the persistent fear is enough to fracture loyalty. Long-time members begin to question whether they can risk keeping their membership visible. Some clubs fade, others go underground, and a few rebrand entirely. What law enforcement has demonstrated is that identity itself can be the weakest link. The brotherhood that once offered protection can now be used against them. The patches, the clubhouses, the club's names, once marks of pride, are now tools of prosecution. The question these groups must face is stark. Can their culture, built on secrecy, loyalty, and tradition, survive when every aspect of it can be targeted by law? Because when law becomes stronger than loyalty, even the fiercest brotherhood can begin to collapse from the inside out.